Hello and welcome back to the Prosperity by Design podcast. I'm your host, Fallon, and today we're going to be going over storytelling part 2. And this is going to build directly off of the previous episode, storytelling part 1. And it's really important that if you have not listened to storytelling part 1, that you do listen to storytelling part 1, because there are exercises in storytelling part 1 that I am going to be referencing back for you to reference back to and to go through and use and utilize as well. So storytelling part 2, I'm not going to go too deep into this. I'm just going to give you a brief overview. If you want to go deeper into this, I am going to be including this in my storytelling matrix. But more or less, what you're going to do is you're going to use that list of core stories that you just wrote down from the first part of this, like the previous episode, storytelling part 1. And you're going to go through that list and circle your core stories. Those core stories are what you are going to be using as pillars. And you're going to create out of those core pillars. So storytelling is obviously very important. We went over how important it is in the last episode, but what's even more important is to identify your stories and the ones that you continue to go back to and you continue to tell other people about, because those are the stories that really did make an impact on you and on how you function and on what you do and who you talk to, who you talk about, who you talk with, who you don't, like it's got a lot to do with a lot of different scenarios and things. So that's why we're going over this in storytelling part 2. And literally it's using the exact list that you just created in that other episode and finding the core stories, like highlight them, circle them, whatever. But those core stories are the ones that you're going to be using to build content out of. Now, like I did mention before, I do go over this more in depth in my storytelling matrix, and that's going to be available. I'll put it in the show notes for you to check out. But I had this epiphany the other day, and everybody talks about like telling stories and storytelling in your content, but nobody really talks about the how to get there part of it, where a lot of the content that a lot of really successful people put out is very repetitive, and it has the same like core and the same root, the same foundation, whatever you want to call it, to every piece of content. And so that's kind of how I came up with this idea and this process, because I was literally in the shower. I was like, well, why don't I just do this? Like, why don't I just focus on making my content this way? Like, I already tell these stories a lot of the time. Why don't I just make them the foundation? So that's kind of how that all started. And I think it makes a whole lot of sense, but that's also because it came out of my brain. But more or less, it's just taking those ones that you highlighted or circled and just incorporating them into your reels, into your graphics, into your TikToks, into your carousels, whatever it might look like, and posting it onto your social media in different angles. And like I said, I go over that way more in the storytelling matrix, and it's really not that bad. It's like $37. So that link is down in the show notes if you are interested. And I want to thank you for tuning in as always. If you could take the extra 2 minutes to leave a review, I would really appreciate it, because that helps the podcast get recommended to new audience members and new people who are on Apple Podcasts or Spotify podcasts or wherever they tune into their podcasts. So if you have not yet already, please be sure to do that. And I want to thank you for continuing to tune in and continuing to listen and continuing to support the podcast. I do actually have some guest speakers scheduled in coming up, so I'm very excited. And we are going to be ringing in 2024 with a whole lot more on the podcast, on YouTube, on TikTok. I have lots of plans, and I'm really excited for 2024. I feel like it's going to be a banger of a year. So be sure to stay tuned. I am going to be going over, as we approach 2024, more goals and more reconciliation of the last year, going over year-end numbers and everything like that, and getting ourselves prepped and ready for the new year. So I'm definitely really excited, but there's still obviously lots to come because we haven't even gotten through the holiday season, and Black Friday is right around the corner. We all know what that means. So I'm going to snag this parking spot that is so friggin' close to my accounting class, and I'm going to park my car, and I'm going to record the next episode very soon. But I want to thank you for tuning in, and I can't wait to talk to you very, very soon. Thanks. Bye.